sport as the evening goes on. We're right in the middle of our football at the moment. We're going to move on to the South Coast now, to Bournemouth against Newcastle United. Craig Beasley up the cherries in all departments, of course. And Steve Wraith, Newcastle United Football Club matters. Gentlemen, good evening to both of you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How you doing?
Well, you know, who'd be a fan these days with VAR still there to haunt everybody as it did today? I guess I've got to talk about that first of all, because everybody is saying that, you know, you were denied by VAR a winner, which would have been a 2-1 win, obviously, Steve, for Bournemouth, not for you guys. So, Craig,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, we're finished. We're starting a new season like we finished the last one. Clueless with this stuff.
Honestly, Mark, it's when you watch it back, you know, in real time, when you're in the stadium, you can't see it, you know, as clearly. But firstly, we were celebrating, you know, it was great 3 points for us. That's how we saw it. And then it gets pulled back for VAR, and the referee didn't even, David Coote didn't even go to the monitor to have a look at this decision. It was actually made by Tim Robinson, who was in the VAR studio overseeing it. The incident itself, so the ball's come in, and Dongo Ouattara, has actually got himself up into a good position, headed the ball, and it struck his shoulder just here. Now, the laws of the game, you know, says that that's a goal. However, you know, his arm is right down by his side. So his arm has not moved at all. You know, he's moved his head, he's struck his shoulder, it's a goal. It's not a handball. Now, if he had moved his arm to get himself into a better position, and you could say that there's an argument there, but there's no consistency. Another referee would have given that, and that could be the difference between teams being relegated and staying up. It could be the difference between us, you know, potentially even getting into Europe. Who knows? I know we might have to pinch ourselves to think about that, but it's the consistency, and VAR is not being managed properly. What David Coote should have done was go over to the monitor, have a look at it for himself. He gave the goal on the pitch and then decided off the back of that, because somebody miles away who's watching it on TV, you know, maybe he's watching it on Sky Sports, for example, at home, you know, that is not, you know, it's not reflective. It's not reflective, and it's really irritating me. That's the second one that we've had so far this season. Of course, the first one, we had a goal disallowed because Lewis Cook's shoulder again was in an offside position. Literally, he just moved his arm, you know, in an offside position. Where do we go with this, Mark? It's ridiculous.
I'll tell you where I go with this, because in about 10, 15 minutes or so after you guys have done your brilliant best, Keith Hackett and Mark House here with me, and I already know that Keith has been full on with the laws of the game, that if it hits above your armpit, which is what happened there, it stands. It's a goal. Yep. It's not a handball. And I mean, you know, it's just incredible. So there we are. You missed out on your 3 points. If I could come to you, Steve, now, and good evening as well. Gordon with a goal as well. That was it. I think it's a really important goal as well for him and everything after the desperate way he was treated in the summer.
Yeah, I would agree with him. I would agree with you, Mark. I mean, first of all, you know, the contact today was on the shirt sleeve. VAR determined it was arm rather than shoulder. The goal's chalked off. We've got to be happy with that, because, you know, that was a certain 3 points then for Bournemouth, and Newcastle are going away with, you know, with their tails between their legs. But, you know, for me, on that performance, I've got to say it, I was slightly happier than I was with the match against Southampton, because the stats, you know, had Newcastle bossing the game with possession, shots on target fairly even. Stevens today passes Newcastle, you know, again ahead of the game. It was a lot better for us. It didn't feel like it watching it, and obviously watching it on TV today, because I didn't travel, was a bit different to being at the game. So a few things did stand out. Gordon still looks jaded from the summer, and I don't think it's the summer that we've just had. I think it's the fact that he hasn't had a break for 2 years, Mark. He obviously played for the 21s in the previous summer, and then went straight into a Champions League campaign with Newcastle. So we're still not seeing the Anthony Gordon of last season, but he was in the right place at the right time, and managed to equalise for Newcastle after the opener from Marcus Tavernier. But it was again, it wasn't Newcastle at their best, and I've got to be happy, as I guess most Newcastle fans have to be, with the fact that we've not really hit the heights of previous seasons in our first 2 games, yet we're sitting in 6th place with 4 points with a home game to come. So I think the sooner the transfer window closes for Newcastle, the better things will be, Mark. And as soon, I was hoping there would be an England manager in place, not Lee Carsley. I don't think that's doing us any favours either, Mark.
No, well, it seems to me that you get the job with the England under-21 and you can just sort of keep your nose clean, and you never know, you get the opportunity, don't you? But there we are. Just one more with you, and then we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk to both of you as well. I'm glad you mentioned the point as well about players and the long-term tiredness and everything else, because if you think about it, last season, the World Cup, everything else before that's gone on, which has included mental fatigue as well as physical fatigue with COVID and everything else, and all of these strange things. For a lot of these younger players, some of them as well, and when they go to a new club and they've got Anthony Gordon classic there, he's been left out by England. He won't be feeling good about that when he comes back to Newcastle. Whatever happens, he'll think the boss perhaps is, going to go off me a little bit as well. These are all things that they're thinking about that just don't help them.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it at the moment, I think, at Crystal Palace with Mark Gahey as well. He's played, he's played a full summer campaign, hasn't had a break, but obviously the will he go, won't he go to Newcastle saga has clearly affected him. But yeah, tiredness does affect players. Bruno Guimaraes has come out and said, that he's not up to his usual best because of that. So you're seeing it across the board, and that affects everybody, at different teams who have international players. But I think Newcastle's issues really are more down to a little bit of to and fro going on behind the scenes. There's obviously some issues which we won't talk about on here, which have obviously hit the dressing room. There's been a change of captaincy at Newcastle with Bruno now taking the armband. We've had the upheaval in the boardroom with Amanda and Mirdad leaving, and new people coming in. So it's been a change at Newcastle, and sometimes the change works in your favour. Sometimes it causes a little uneasiness, and I think that's where we're at the moment. I think there's a little bit of uneasiness around the corridors of Newcastle United, and that's certainly reflecting on what we're seeing on the pitch at the moment.
Steve, Craig, we'll be back with both of you in just a second. Well, we're talking about Bournemouth against Newcastle United. It was a draw today, a point apiece, and both of them have started reasonably well, and they'll be happy enough that they both have got points on the board. Just wondering, actually, what both of you think. I mean, we've got another game, and then we've got an international break coming up, and all of this that's going on, and sort of already disrupting the season. Whether they could have thought, just in a way this time around with the World Cup and everything else, why don't we let them have this international games and then we start our Premier League football, rather than chaos in the way now and everything else that's going to be going on for the next few days? I'll come to you first, if I may, Craig.
Yeah, I completely do agree with that, to be honest, Mark, because it just loses the momentum. To be honest, even though we have only got 2 draws from our first 2 games, we've played very well in those 2 games. Now, we do have a lot more international players than we ever have done here at AFC Bournemouth. So you've got players like Evan Nielsen, Neto could be going to Brazil. You've got Senesi who'll be going to Argentina. So there's going to be all this disruption around a side that, you know, are just gelling. New signing, Julian Alejo. He's going to be going with Mexico, for example. So, yeah, I do agree with you on that, Mark. It's just disruptive, really, to you know, the start of the season.
Well, and for you at Newcastle as well, Steve, isn't it? I mean, really, it's the last thing any of us need.
Yeah, I mean, it works in different ways for different clubs. I mean, I guess by the time we come to the international break, Everton and Jordan Pickford will be delighted to have an international break. But with Newcastle, it's a completely different, you know, set of affairs this season. At the moment, we don't have many injuries. Last season we did, and breaks came at the right time for us. But yeah, it's crazy. I'm like every football fan. I just want to see my team play. We've got an international break in September. We've got one in October, and we've got one in November. And, you know, as you say, you build up a momentum. If you're a team that's on the run and you're getting a good set of results, then, you know, it works massively, you know, against you. But yeah, I'd like to see the internationals possibly paused, certainly the September one, just to get the season kick-started and give you an opportunity to, you know, to get an idea of how the table's going to pan out. I think we can already see where it's going at the top. You know, Manchester City and Arsenal, as usual, occupying the top spots, and at the bottom it seems to be a couple of the same old faces, you know. So it's yeah, I agree. International breaks need to be looked at. If it's a competitive game, it's a European Championship, it's a World Cup qualifier, something like that, then I think international breaks are important. I appreciate they've got to have friendlies, but you know, maybe let's look at how many friendlies we have, you know, in course of the season. We've got plenty of time in the summer to play friendlies when there's no major competition.
Yeah, look, you're absolutely spot on there, Steve. Steve and Craig, thank you both very much indeed. It won't be the last time we have the boys on, of course, this season, and really looking forward to it. It's going to be a decent season all round at the moment. I think there's going to be more twists and turns than we actually realise at the moment. But the last thing that any fan ever needs is a player of theirs to pick up an injury at an international break 3 games into the season. What about the rest?